Great. My future career is at daycare.
Good afternoon. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the library.
Thank you.
I'm Lauren Bradley. I'm the business specialist here at the Champaign Public Library. I'm so happy to see you here on this rainy Tuesday. So excited to have you here for Board Bootcamp, Basics of Strategic Planning for Nonprofits. I don't know maybe if you guys know, but here at the library we have a lot of great resources for doing market research, writing your business plan, and for nonprofits you can use Foundation Directory or research grants. We have a lot of great tools here at the library. But one of the best things is that we have these great workshops here in partnership with a lot of local experts here in the community. And so I would like to welcome up to the stage Genevieve Kirk. She is the director for the Center for Nonprofit Excellence at the Community Foundation of East Central Illinois, and she will introduce today's presenters. All right, welcome Genevieve.
Thank you, Lauren, and thank you all for being here today for our workshop. As Lauren mentioned, I'm Genevieve Kirk with the Community Foundation of East Central Illinois. Our vision is to improve the quality of life across East Central Illinois, and I'd just like to thank Champaign Public Library for letting us use this wonderful space here today. We appreciate you. So today's session is part of our Board Bootcamp series for nonprofits, and our focus is on understanding the basics of strategic planning. And I wanted you all to know the Community Foundation itself is actually going through strategic planning right now, so this process is near and dear to our hearts. It is helping to inform our goals over the next 3 years and to be really focused and strategic in having alignment towards those goals. So we are really excited to bring you today's session to deepen your understanding of this process, who to involve in the process, and how to go about it as you prepare to do strategic planning. I also wanted to let you know that our Board of Trustees approved last week a new capacity building grant cycle for this year. We last ran this grant cycle in 2022, and this funding awards eligible nonprofits grants of up to $5,000 for their different capacity building and technical assistance needs, which would cover, for example, expenditures like hiring a facilitator to do strategic planning at your organizations, among other things. So I wanted to let you know that grant cycle will open on May the 1st. Applications will be due by May the 31st, and I'll be sending an announcement out tomorrow with more details and links if you're interested in looking at the guidelines and potentially applying for one of those grants. Also, I wanted to let you know, you don't furiously need to take notes during today's session, although you can if you'd like, but I'll be sending out the PowerPoint deck that our presenters have shared with us. Following today's session, you'll probably get it from me tomorrow morning, so you can look for that. And for those of you who do like a paper hard copy of the slides as they're being presented, I do have a few printed copies I'll circulate here in a second. Just raise your hand if you would like a copy of those. And now it's my pleasure to introduce you to our presenters today. Join me in welcoming Vanessa Forey. I know Vanessa through her work in our Community Solutions Incubator, where she was a participant with Prairie Dragon Paddlers, a local nonprofit organization. She's retired after a 31-year career as an advancement professional at the University of Illinois, where she held several executive leadership positions in alumni relations and strategic communications. She has been a key participant and developer of numerous strategic planning initiatives for singular organizations as well as complex multi-unit systems. She has her Bachelor's of Science in Journalism and an MBA from the University of Illinois. We also have with us today Joe DeLuce. Joe recently retired after a career of over 25 years with the Champaign Park District and over 42 years as a Parks and Recreation professional. He has a Bachelor of Science degree from Kent State University and a Master of Science degree from the University of Illinois. Joe has developed and created numerous strategic plans over the years for various park districts and has developed numerous partnerships with local nonprofit organizations. So a lot of expertise in the room today. Would you join me in welcoming Joe and Vanessa?
Good afternoon. I might be better known as Jane DeLuce's husband, Jen and Jordan DeLuce's dad, and Jim Turpin's son-in-law. So if you know any of those people, I'm sure you do. But Vanessa challenged me today. She goes, Joe, you got to get these people excited about strategic plans. So I'm trying to take on that challenge and try to get you really excited about strategic planning. So I need you to help me. It's real quick, real easy. All you gotta do is a couple answers out loud. Now you gotta help me. You really gotta get into this now. Are you ready? Knock knock.
Who's there?
Woo.
Woo.
See, you're excited, aren't you? Woo. See you there?
I naturally get excited about strategic planning, so I don't understand why you have to get people excited. It's natural.
But yeah, we've been both involved with strategic planning, and most recently, like I said, Gina B said I retired from the Champaign Park District. And what we learned over the years, I think it was back in 2007, 2008, we actually hired a firm to come in and do a comprehensive plan, a strategic plan, and a community survey. And it was probably around $70,000. And after that, we realized what they put into the report is basically what we told them. A lot of it was. So we realized that, hey, maybe we need to work on strategic planning on our own. So from that point on, we started creating our own strategic plans in-house. So it really helped us, and it got more staff involved. We tried to involve every staff in the entire district involved in the strategic planning, and it really helped out. So that's kind of our emphasis to say that you can do it on your own, maybe with a little help from the facilitator, but there's possibilities of doing this by yourself and doing it really inexpensive. So that's kind of what our goal is, trying to encourage nonprofits to be able to do that. Because we know you don't have a whole lot of money, but at the same time, you can get a real quality project by simply following some simple steps. And that's what we're here today. We're going to talk about strategic planning and some of the things that we're going to go over. So if you have ever wondered why, how are we doing? Where are we going? How will we get there? How can we be more effective? How can we work more efficiently? What are our priorities? How can we do better? And what do our customers and members, clients need from us? So those are some of the things you need to think about where you are and what you're going to go about when you're thinking about strategic planning.
I think also interestingly, no matter the size of your organization or if you're a huge conglomerate, everyone is asking these questions, right? But to Joe's point, if you think about the size and scale of your organization, then just do what makes sense to move you from point A to point B. It doesn't have to be a $70,000 external gig. It's something that you can do more deliberately, but just enough, a streamlined approach that fits the size and culture of your organization.
So what is strategic planning? It's a tool for focus, alignment, resource management, and a roadmap that guides your organization towards success, sustainability, and growth. And I guess the idea that it really helps you get everybody on the same page. It really helps your organization realize what's going on, what your goals are, and where you're going to the future. And if you can get everybody on the same page, which is really hard sometimes to get everybody in the organization thinking the same way and knowing where you're going. So as a supervisor, I read a book back a long time ago, The 1 Minute Manager, and it really talked about 3 things you need to be a great supervisor. Well, the first one was make sure everyone understands the expectations. And I think that's one thing the strategic plan does. It really helps you understand the expectation of the organization and where you're going. So that's the key. Of course, the second one was when somebody did something right, you thank them, you congratulate them. If they did something wrong, you work with them and coach them. So if you can do those 3 things, you can be a great supervisor. That's all it takes to be a great supervisor. There's a lot more to it, but those are the basics. Why do a strategic plan? Developing a strategy is more effective than leaving the future to chance. Engage people in thinking about the future of your nonprofit. The strategy helps achieve the vision. Implementation is important as planning. The best way to predict the future is to create it. So the idea is make sure you have a plan and make sure everybody's on the same page and follow that plan.
I would also want to add that, and I've seen some organizations even recently that we've been working with, where it also helps you build trust, especially when maybe you're bringing in new board members, inexperienced board members, hiring new staff. And you have to build that camaraderie and that culture, but trust. And a strategic plan gives you enough structure to help create that as well.
Just a comment about boards real quickly. We brought in a person who talked about it when we worked at the Champaign Park District. We talked about how the board and staff work together. And the thing I took away from that most about that session was the consultant said, just like a board should be in the balcony and the staff should be on the dance floor. And they should never meet on the dance floor. The board should be the big picture and the staff should be carrying out the strategic plan and the goals and objectives of the organization.
The steps.
The steps. So how does it differ from other plans? Business plan, the setup, what you do and how you do it. Marketing plan, methods and messages for communicating with stakeholders, creating awareness and prompting action, sales, attendance, etc. So
I just think the business plan is defining your lane. This is where your market is. This is where what you're doing, and that's going to come first. The marketing plan is actually going to support the strategic plan. So there's kind of a bit of an order that makes sense as well.
what are the benefits of doing a strategic plan? Provides direction to avoid diversions, helps manage limited time and resources for the best outcomes, brings clarity and unity to other aspects of the organization, such as grant, accreditation, board reports, staff management, marketing plans, indicates where to measure progress, and helps identify where adjustments are needed.
Not here.
Can you hear
We're gonna pause for a sec, because the sound's going a little in and out, at least from the back, so we'll just have you turn.
I'm just gonna take this
Or
one.
am I just
switch
talking
it.
away from
Yeah, but
Anybody ever watch Singing in the Rain?
honestly, you might not even need a microphone because you guys are.
Can you
really
hear
good.
us okay?
Yeah.
If we just project a little bit better, maybe
Yeah.
we'll do that and
Yep.
take the tape will pick up, okay?
I think you guys, yeah, as long as you have these on,
Yeah.
it's gonna be perfect.
Let's just do that.
Okay.
All right.
Well, if you change your mind, I'm gonna put these microphones right
Thank you.
here.
We promise to be louder. Did you get through the
Yep.
list?
Mhm. Yes.
Because I have to tell you, I love the benefits of a strategic plan. The providing direction to avoid diversions, especially, it is so easy to get distracted because everyone is coming to you, everyone is asking for this and that, and it's a priority in their minds. And sometimes you just need to say, that's great, I acknowledge you, but I gotta stay on track here, you know? That's the beauty of a strategic plan. And the other piece I love about it is the clarity and unity. It helps you bring the language around what you're doing and where you're going consistently. It comes up in your marketing messages, it comes up in your board reports, it comes up in your marketing materials and advertising and promotions. It just helps you maintain consistency and clarity about your organization because there's a lot of noise to break through, right? So that the strategic plan can actually help you do so many things if you take it and extrapolate it through all aspects of your operations.
So working for the Champaign Park District, of course, is a government agency. And a lot of times government agencies are really easy to say the word no. We can't do it. And so, when I became the director, one of the things I said we want to do is say yes more. And try to find a way to say yes. So, but you can't say yes to everything. Especially when staff come and ask for raises every day, it's kind of hard to say yes every time they come and ask for a raise. But with a strategic plan, we're able to say, hey, does it fit into our strategic plan? Does it fit into our mission, our vision? If the request meets those goals or is part of that, then we can say yes and work with it and try to make it happen. So the strategic plan helps in a lot of different ways that you may not realize.
Right. So how do you know when you're ready, Joe?
So, how to gauge readiness. Resolve any crisis before starting a strategic plan. So if you have any issues going on, make sure those are resolved before you start the plan, because you don't want to be hampered down, get started, and then an issue come up, or you're not dealing with it, and it comes up, hits you in the face.
We've actually had some organizations where they weren't even sure that they had full job descriptions for all their staff positions, or their board wasn't fully onboarded to know what the board responsibilities were, let alone staff responsibilities and where those two met. So kind of sometimes you need to get some of the foundational stuff taken care of so that you can come together to create your strategic plan.
Build on any existing elements that already work well. For example, if you're in programming, you have a great program, focus, make sure you include that. But also work on some things that may not be working as well. Know one way to plan, build scale efforts to organization scope and stage of development. Have board and staff commit to participating in the process and plan around major events and key deadlines. One thing at the Park District, we never really did strategic planning during the summer. We were so busy during the summer, you just had events and different things going on. You just didn't have time and staff didn't have time. Of course, as a director, summer was my best time because staff was so busy, they didn't bother me too much. So it was always nice during the summer to go out and see what's going on.
You could plan for your strategic plan. Also, I think, I don't think we can reiterate it too much. Make sure it fits the scope of your organization. A lot of entities don't have a large staff, don't have a very experienced board, so don't overwhelm yourself. This does not have to be a big hairy monster. It's actually such a useful tool that if you approach it in that way, it's actually quite liberating, I will say.
Where to begin? Decide who to include in the process and how to engage them to enhance your planning effectiveness. Stakeholders, representatives, they could be in the room, they could be do a one-on-one interview, it could be a survey. We recommend a 3-year plan, because especially nowadays with things changing as fast as they do, a 5-year plan seems pretty far off, and a lot of things can happen between 3 and 5 years. Complete and advance the budget cycle and develop a timeline. So, this is where we're going to ask you to think about who are your stakeholders in your organization. So we'll give you a few minutes. If you want to write down maybe 4 or 5 different stakeholders that you deal with, and stakeholders can be a lot of different people, especially people that have an influence, board members, different staff, people in the community. It could be a lot of different people. So maybe think about that and take a few minutes and just write down who you think are your stakeholders moving forward.
Anyone who is impacted by a decision that your organization makes. Anyone that has a vested interest in the outcomes, in your success. These would be representatives who would need to have some kind of voice as you build up a strategic plan. So there's the usual board members, staff members, but does anyone want to share another category of stakeholder that makes sense?
Like your participants,
Program
participants.
Program participants, your clients, your members, your beneficiaries, absolutely. Any others?
Our volunteers.
Volunteers is a great one. Your donors maybe, or your funders.
I'm
Yeah.
curious, when you're a nonprofit sort of trying to address the needs of the community, and there's maybe other organizations that do similar work, do people ever include like other organizations in it?
Absolutely. Peer organizations, peer leaders.
Also, maybe you have a partner in the community that you work with on a different program or activity, or someone that helps you with funding or whatever.
Right. Some of those peer relationships might also lead to new partnerships, right? Especially, I think, in the nonprofit realm, I don't think there's a whole lot of competition. I think everybody's just trying to do good. So I've always found that the nonprofit sector is very willing to partner, to cooperate with other organizations. Okay, do any more?
Go ahead.
Anybody have any other suggestions before we move on? What else do I have here? Allied agencies, sometimes depending on the work that you do, even other community members, just the general public, sometimes is very helpful, if it makes sense to the work that you do.
So what are the key components of the strategic plan? Mission, what you do and why. Some people also refer to mission as what's your purpose. So what's your purpose of your organization? Vision, what you aspire to. What does it look like 5, 10, 15 years down the road? What's the vision for your organization? Values, what you stand for. And SWOT analysis, strength, weakness, opportunity, and threats. assess the current status. So that really helps a lot of people when they do a SWOT analysis, understand where they need work, where they need to improve on, or what the opportunities are coming or threats to the organization. So very important to do a SWOT analysis. Goals, where do you want to go? Very important to do the goals. Objectives, what do you need to get there? So your objectives are to help you reach your goals. You also want to develop tactics to achieve the objectives, identify what resources will be required, determine measures of success and progress, assign responsibility, plan for periodic, consistent monitoring, and make the adjustments as needed. So in your strategic plan, we always thought it was a good idea to make assignments of staff or whoever's responsible for those goals, objectives, or tactics. So it's very clear who's responsible, who's for leading the charge for those objectives to make sure they get done. And we also had a way to report each month. Basically each quarter we would give an update of the strategic plan, share that with the staff, and share it with the board.
That's so important to keep that document alive throughout those 3 years, because you're going to not only be measuring against it, but it's going to help you pivot if you need to pivot. It helps you gauge your success, but also I know a lot of this stuff gets very kind of geeky sounding sometimes, but this actually makes a whole lot of sense. And I will say, when we do these talks, you'll hear goals and objectives and tactics and strategies. Those terms get thrown around a lot. For the way that we define it, the goals are the big strategic piece. The objectives are going to help you, I keep doing this, sorry. The objectives help you reach those goals, and within each objective, you're going to have tactics. What are you actually going to do to meet that objective to ultimately attain the goal? So that's how we talk about goals and objectives. But you'll hear other people use them interchangeably, and I will tell you they are not interchangeable. They're very specific. And then basically what you see in the structure of a strategic plan is almost like Russian nesting dolls. You just kind of dig down a little bit deeper from goals to objectives to tactics, and each of those are going to have, as Joe said, a point person so that you know they're getting done. You have somebody who owns that to make sure that it's moving forward.
So mission. Your mission is present-orientated for internal and external audiences, so you really want to promote your mission. And we did that on our website and program brochures, have the mission out there. We had it in all of our facilities. We posted our mission, vision, values, active statements that defines what the organization does and why, inspires organizational culture.
So the mission is actually going to show up in a very key moment when you're developing your strategic goals. So we'll show you how that happens later.
But we'd like you to take a turn and maybe think about your mission and maybe take a crack at drafting a quick mission statement and talk about who, what, where, our cause, our actions, what do we do, our impact, changes for the better. We have a couple of examples of, give you CU Special Recreation that we work with. Their mission was to provide quality recreation programs and services for Champaign-Urbana residents with disabilities. And Feeding America's mission to feed America's hungry through a nationwide network of member food banks and engage our country in the fight to end hunger. So won't you take a few minutes and think about your mission, if you already have one, or tweak it, and take it.
Go back to this.
Yeah.
If you can just whittle down what it is your organization does in a sentence, for whom, or where, defining your market, and what's the impact you're hoping to have. Why are you doing this?
So the goal should be try to create a mission statement that you can remember without having to look it up. Sometimes that's hard to do. Some people go on and on and on and have a whole page of a mission statement. When you ask them, if you're in an elevator, somebody asks you, what do you do and what's your mission, you should be able to tell them.
So this isn't a laundry list. You don't have to make sure everyone feels represented in your mission statement. feel free to ask any questions as you're thinking about this. Yeah.
I have a question. So, like we've been around for 40 years, same mission statement, but over the last 8 years, we've kind of refined that a little bit and redirected a little bit. Not to the point where we would redo our articles of incorporation or anything like that, but how does that work in terms of rephrasing to some extent? So we would have, like, we had a very specific ecosystem, let's say, that we were there to save, right, 40 years ago, but now it's more broad. It's just natural areas in general, forests, woodland, prairies, water. So how does that work? I mean, we wouldn't have to go back to articles of incorporation, right? This is a tweak. It's not like a new purpose. How does
Right,
that
but
work?
your mission statement doesn't have to be etched in stone, though.
Right.
So your mission statement can change and evolve over time, especially as your organization evolves and grows.
Right.
And your capacity changes too. So again, getting back to the who, what, where, if the where is bigger than it used to be, just finding new language. So have you rewritten the actual mission statement at all?
Yeah, no, I mean, when we talk, we talk differently and we change it verbally, but we haven't changed it on our literature or anything like that. And I didn't know if that's a board action, like what would be the best process there? Like to have a board action that it is officially changing, like a resolution? Would you go that far, or is that more of a marketing and procedural thing where you would just adopt new language?
Well,
Yeah, we actually had
Go
the
ahead.
board, when we did our strategic planning process, we always looked at mission, vision, values, and if we changed them, we took it to the board for their approval.
That's
So I think you need to do that.
you want the biggest organizational buy-in
Okay.
for getting on the same page. This is what we do. This is why we do it. This is who we're doing it for.
Right.
This is the impact we're going to make.
Okay.
So absolutely.
That's great.
Yeah, sometimes it gets really interesting wordsmithing,
Yes.
mission plans, so some people like certain words and some people don't like certain words, so it's always tricky.
The beauty of this, though, is none of this is rocket science. And when I worked at the university, I actually was involved in some people who did rocket science. This is not it. Okay. Does anyone want to share a stab at a mission statement? Or, better yet, do you want to make comments on these? Maybe that's easier. Are these good mission statements? Would you do anything to make them better? Okay, let me ask, do we have, let's just take a look at the cause. Do we have who, what, where in these? Sort of, pretty much, yeah. How about what we do? Is there a what we do? Okay. Do we have the impact? I kind of think maybe we could improve the impact a
Yeah.
little bit on that first one, but
It really does a lot for a lot of good people.
yeah. So even the best organizations don't always have the perfect mission statement. There's always a way to just try and be much more direct and declarative of what your organization's about. Okay, we won't put anybody on this one. Okay.
So vision,
Yeah.
future orientated for internal insider audience, defines the bigger why of the organization, aspirations, inspires organizational growth. So it's where you want to be in the future. What is your organization or your nonprofit going to look like in 5 or 10 or 15 years from now? A couple examples. United Way envisions a community where all individuals and families achieve their human potential through education, financial stability, and healthy lives. Global Fund for Women envisions a world where movements for gender justice have transformed power and privilege for a few into equity and equality for all.
So think about your vision as, if we did everything in our mission, the goal is one day we would achieve the vision, right? This is, how would you put yourself out of business, basically? right? Or achieve your mission and have to come up with a new mission because you've already achieved that. The vision is also this futuristic, aspirational statement. It's the bigger why of why you're doing what you're doing. It's gonna inspire people, especially the insiders of your organization, board members, volunteers, people who are gonna believe in that mission and want to help it flourish. So it can be very inspirational.
And it goes back to what you're doing you have a new program, new activity, something you want to do differently. Does it meet your vision and your
Right.
mission? Yeah.
Or if you're inching closer to that vision, it's time to change up the mission, right?
Values, evergreen, never change. For external audiences, define the organization's core principles, ethics, and what it stands for. Inspire organization, customers, clients, and members.
So this is where your marketing people come in. These are the values are what you're gonna see in marketing materials and communications. It's what you're communicating to those external audiences, that this is what you stand for no matter what conditions, no matter what's happening, this is always true about this organization.
So we stole these from the Champaign Park District and Goodwill. The Champaign Park District, fun, supportive, creative, professional, personable, and proactive. And those are some of the same things we use in our work culture. But would you like to work for an organization that strives to have fun, supportive, creative, professional, personable, and proactive? I think a lot of people would want to work for an organization like that. And Goodwill Industries, respect, stewardship, ethics, learning, and innovation.
So we've gone through mission, vision, and values. I know that the Community Foundation and the incubator work with organizations to hone those elements because they're going to be very key for your strategic planning. So is the SWOT analysis. Has anyone not done a SWOT analysis before and not familiar with it? Okay, great. So you understand what it is. The importance of it in a strategic planning process is to give you that environmental assessment of where things are at right now for your organization. The strengths and weaknesses, those are those internal components of your own organization, right? The pluses and minuses that you already possess and you have control over. The opportunities and the threats are the external things that you don't always have control over, but are going to impact how you function or what, they may be obstacles to success. They may be, again, opportunities that you maybe have not capitalized on yet, but you're in a good position to do so. It's a great way to just get that environmental assessment as you prep for what your strategic goals are going to be and what your future planning is going to be. So we thought we would take a little step here at the worksheet. You should all have a worksheet like this to just, again, you want lots of stakeholders participating in this process, but just for now, to be thinking about the strengths and weaknesses. If you can just jot down one for each of these segments, but the strengths and weaknesses are looking internally at your organization and think about actual things that you have going for you, basically. And then your external focus, your opportunities and threats are things that aren't in your control. They might be economic, they might be funding sources, they might be changes in laws and regulations that might impact your areas of operation. Sometimes you can identify unmet needs, and you have some capacity, perhaps, to take on some of those needs related to the work that your organization does.
I think one of the threats we had at the Champaign Park District, you really don't think about it, but it's competition from other agencies, other people doing something similar like the YMCA. Their Urbana Park Districts try to steal our ideas all the time. No, I'm just kidding. But It's amazing, and now how many people do parks and recreation activities. It's amazing all the different people that run sports programs, youth activities, adult programs, senior programs. You just never know who's out there trying to be your competition. So it was really interesting that competition really became a big threat to us, because now you got to compete and you got to step up your game to make sure that you're one of the top providers in the community and people want to come to the Champaign Park District.
So when you're thinking about strengths and weaknesses, human resources might be a part of that. You want to try and be specific though when you are doing a SWOT analysis, because you want to avoid generalities, because these are things you are actually going to be able to execute or actually have to address. Physical resources too. Do you have buildings? Do you have physical space where you conduct programs? That's an asset, right? Maybe it's the reputation you have built up already in the community, or the credibility you have among peers. Some things that you may not be able to control are future trends that are happening. Might be environmentally, might be politically, might be culturally, the economy, might be changing demographics in your market. Does anyone want to share any at this point, just as an example for others? And it can be from any of the quadrants. Yes?
So I'm the executive director of the Illini Media Company.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
My alma mater.
I know, yeah. So some of our strengths are we have a relatively active audience in that we are the student newspaper, the Daily Liner, the student-run radio station WPGU, and the student yearbook, the Ilio. We have 150 plus years of history. We have good alumni engagement, and we have a strong known brand. Those are, I would say, our strengths. On the weaknesses side, we have a recent history of a lack of organizational structure and stability, student turnover every 4 to 6 years, a lack of cash on hand. We're stable, but we're not flush by any means. And then in the era of social media and people being able to get their news from anywhere, we do have a bit of a diminishing reputation and a diminishing awareness in our community outside of campus, as well as a little bit on campus, but specifically the role that the Daily Illini and our other products once played in Champaign and Urbana outside of campus has certainly diminished over the last 2 decades. But those are also opportunities in a way. The lack of reliable media in our community is an opportunity for us. Helping students grow is a good story and a good PR tactic for us to use. And then we also provide an opportunity to regain trust in media because of our mission and what we're doing and how we're growing. And then obviously threats, economic conditions, general distrust in media, and a lack of understanding of the value of advertising for specifically smaller businesses in our community.
Right. That's amazing, and that's just you sitting there. Imagine if you have all your stakeholders having a voice in really what you're identifying, but you sound very self-aware of the organization. And those things that you've identified and that I'm guessing would pretty much track to a broader group of input, doing a full-blown SWOT analysis is going to inform your strategic plan in that, are you truly capitalizing on all those strengths that you have? Are there ways you could be helping make that more clear, more emphasized to your audiences, for example? The weaknesses, which you very kindly and aptly said, can also be opportunities, right? Are you doing things, maybe they're even new business lines you hadn't even thought about, but will help you address those things for example, you do have a unique niche, just off the top of my head from what you were saying, and you're in an academic setting. Maybe part of what you do is help encourage literacy education, how to know, to discern media and facts, etc. You know, where where you are particularly well positioned to leverage some of those opportunities that others might not be. So those are awesome. Anybody else have anything they would like to share?
One thing as a director, it's really hard for me not to take the weaknesses personally. So, but you can't. You got to step back and say, hey, that's what we need to work on. You got to take it and deal with it, because you don't want, as a director, you don't want anything to have any weaknesses. You think
Right.
you're the best organization or whatever. So it's really hard not to take it personal, but you got to step back and be willing to deal with the issues and face them head on.
That's a really good point. Has anyone? Yeah, Genevieve.
It's more of a question. So we've seen how you do a SWOT individually. Can you talk through what this would look like as a part of a larger process? Like, would you have your full board do this, and how would that look facilitated in a group setting?
Well, having been a part of a variety of ways that gets workshopped, I think you want somewhere in between. You more I would recommend representatives of key stakeholder groups. It doesn't even have to be all your stakeholder groups. There are some stakeholders that are very similar, and you kind of know that inherently. But the key stakeholder groups that have a real impact on your organization, you want that voice in the room. And basically you're workshopping it openly, with whiteboards and big sheets of paper, and because you want to come to a consensus on that SWOT analysis. You want to make sure that everybody is comfortable with what's being identified, and you want to try to not have one voice sort of dominate the whole plan, right? So as much as I know you're very aware, if your group's SWOT analysis looked just like what you did, I would go, maybe we're not getting all the voices involved here. So workshopping it to consensus is what I would particularly recommend with a small workable group. 8 to 10 is even maybe kind of the sweet spot, I would think, because you just want to have enough of a broad sense that you're hitting all the spots, but you can come to consensus, and they have to be, they've got to be friendlies to a certain point too, because you are going to be pretty frank and open in that kind of a workshop, right? You want to identify problems because you want to be helpful in solving them and supporting them. So you don't just want to pick people who particularly are naysayers. That's not really helping you. You want people who want to identify problems and figure out how to help you solve them. That's my thought. Do you have anything to add?
I think one of the hardest things, especially when you have negative staff or people within your organization that are very negative, and sometimes that's really hard to deal with. So
Yeah.
you got to be able to take that and deal with it, and I guess try to get them involved and try to see some of the positive things also.
Right. So think about too, when you're talking to, maybe you're talking to clients, customers, members, beneficiaries who are a bit critical. You're also trying to find out, kind of get at the heart of really why are they critical, and what do they think needs to be the solution, right? It's sometimes getting them to tell you what the solution should be and see if that rings true, and is it something you can do. Similarly, I think in SWOT analyses, if you can identify particular weaknesses or threats, I say be specific, but I don't mean to say Joe never shows up on time, and that's a real weakness, right? You want to be able to identify the action that's the weakness, not the person that's the weakness, okay? Help, I hope? Okay. So we'll get through these two because we want to wrap up soon for any other questions. So next, see where all this comes together. So mission, vision, values, and SWOT analysis are giving you all kinds of good content to work on developing strategic goals. So you're thinking about what's this organization what do I want it to look like? What do we want it to look like 3 years from now? We're going to select 3 to 5 focus area categories that are aligned with your operations. So that's why I say the mission statement is very important, because your strategic goals should be able to match, to track to what your mission is. And we always say that one of the focus areas should always be in the area of administration and resources. Because if you're not paying attention to how you're going to have the administration and resource support to achieve those goals, you're dead in the water. So you have to plan for that. It's not just going to happen, right? So you have to come up with strategies to also shore that part up, regardless of the other focus areas. Make sense? Okay. So here's what we're basically saying, our little nesting. You have one mission. You're going to identify 3 to 5 focus areas that are aligned to that mission, your operations, and you're going to develop one strategic goal for each of those focus areas. This is also just a suggested way to make it workable, to make it manageable. Of course, SMART goals. We all love SMART goals, right? Specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. So the worst thing a strategic plan can do is sit on the shelf, right? And I've been a part of several strategic plans that have done just that in large organizations. They have been so complex and so detailed, but they don't make any sense to the person who's going to work every day executing a program and just trying to get through the next week with programs and events and so forth, that it just sits there and it gets ignored. Then it's not helping anybody, right? So give it a time element, make them measurable, make it be an inherent part of everything you do in your organization throughout the year. So here's an example of how to map. This is the actual mission statement of the Prairie Dragon Paddlers that I work with. It's inspiring hope and contributing to the health and well-being of breast cancer survivors by building community, promoting wellness through dragon boating, and providing outreach activities related to breast cancer awareness and education. Here were the focus areas that they identified to align directly to the mission. Boat team races. So it operates a dragon boat team, and they go to races, specifically aligned to the mission. It's involved in promoting health and wellness and survivorship activities, directly aligned to mission. We do research support in breast cancer research, directly aligned to the mission. Outreach and education, directly aligned. And then the absolute must, administration and resources, okay? So now you have your 5, in this case, 5 focus areas, but that's why I'm saying look to your mission and make sure you have a strategic goal aligned with every piece that you say is what you do in your mission. So these 5 focus areas now end up getting a strategic goal, and we won't go into a lot of them, but here's just one example. For the boat team and races, we wanted to increase recruitment and retention of team members to grow the organization, okay? We'll drill down a little bit more, but we did develop a strategic goal for every one of these. The administration and resources section is simply build a foundation of organizational stability and sustainability. If you can't operate, you're not able to help anybody, right? So we'll drill down these objectives, 2 to 4. Each objective then, so the strategic goal is going to have 2 to 4 objectives underneath, and I'll give you examples of what I mean by that. And then up to 3 tactics for each objective, the resources you're going to need, and how you're going to measure success. The reason I'm doing this is, again, to try and make it manageable, that it doesn't just run away with you. So here's just an example of a planning worksheet where you would identify the overall strategic goal and develop an objective under each of those with some tactics. So here's a working example of that. The strategic goal was to increase recruitment and retention for growth. So one objective was, let's establish an onboarding process for new team members. So they feel welcome, they feel they are familiar with the organization. And the way we're gonna do that onboarding process is that the tactic one was that the executive director was going to meet with each returning new or potential team member. Tactic two was gonna be, we're gonna develop a manual. Number three, we were gonna develop an FAQ to be more responsive to emerging questions. So that was one objective to get to strategic goal. The second objective was promote broader awareness of the organization and the community, get people to know who we are. Tactic one, more speaking engagements with community groups that can support what we do. Two, promote initiatives in the media. We weren't really having anybody reach out a lot to the media to get coverage of our events and our programs. Number three, develop partnerships with the physicians in town to be more familiar with the organization and perhaps let their patient base know about the organization. So each one of these objectives, we then identified what resources was it going to take to get that to make it happen. It's going to take executive director's time. It's going to maybe take contracted help to do some of the, like producing a manual, graphic designer, editor time, etc. Costs for printing, that kind of thing. How would you measure the success of that objective? We could survey the whole team after the last practice before the end of year celebration to gauge satisfaction. Another measure of success would be to track media and the number of talks. Ask new members where they heard about the organization. So it's very compact, but there's a lot in here, and it helps people, again, know, what am I doing next month? Oh, I want to make sure I'm doing something in here to move us closer to this strategic goal. Does that make sense? Okay. So here's how our nest finishes out, right? So one mission, 3 to 5 focus areas aligned to that mission, one strategic goal for each of those focus areas, 2 to 5 objectives to achieve the goal, 3 or less tactics for each objective. What are you actually going to do? What's the actual thing you're going to do? And then the resources and measures of success per objective, plus, to Joe's point earlier, appointing somebody who's going to be responsible to making sure that happens. Who's your point person to make sure each of those objectives gets done? Even though it'll involve more people, who's your go-to person? Okay? Then progress, conducting periodic, consistent monitoring. Use that plan. It's great to bring up in staff meetings. How are we doing, folks? Go through your strategic goals. Great to bring up in board meetings. Here's how we're doing, board. Here's where we're needing some help. You can gauge progress. Sometimes things change. Some major opportunity or threat came along and changed some of your ability to do something. That's when you can say, okay, we've got to change this, we've got to pivot. A strategic plan doesn't get made and then stays permanent for 3 years. You may have to do tweaking and adjusting to it because it's your guide, it's your roadmap. So if 74 has a closing on the ramp, right, to 57, you got to come up with another way, right? Okay, and so making adjustments is warranted. And
So
Joe,
some final tips Vanessa and I put together. Prepare, prepare, prepare. You can never be too prepared in beginning to the strategic planning process. Everything you can to make sure you're set, ready to go. Use a facilitator to lead discussions. Unless you have somebody in your organization who's really good at that, it's best to find somebody from outside to come in who can work with you and lead your organizations through the process. It's important to think about the work culture, as we mentioned earlier. It's probably one of the most important things an organization can have is a positive work culture. Safety, all those different things that make employees want to work with you and do a great job. Don't make too many goals so that they can't get accomplished. So many times we want to put 5, 10, 15, 20 goals, whatever. Make sure that it's something that your organization can handle, because you want to be successful, but you don't want to overboard your employees, and don't overwhelm staff with other goals. I know at the park district we had strategic planning goals, we had comprehensive goals, we had department goals, we had board goals. It got ridiculous. There was so much stuff, they couldn't get it all done, and it drove staff crazy trying to report on everything. So we really try to limit it to the strategic planning and keep as much in the strategic plan that they focus on. Hold retreat at a location away from the office. Nothing better than getting away for the day, getting the staff and the board to a different location where they feel comfortable and able to express themselves. Share the plan with stakeholders, staff, stakeholders, etc. So its key is to make sure everyone understands what your strategic planning goals are and where you're going, so everybody, as we talked about, is on the same page, and celebrate success when achieving those goals. So have a party, do something to excite the staff and thank them for doing an outstanding job, and over and over, you can never not do enough success, rewarding staff for doing outstanding work, so it's very important. So
Imagine how good that feels too, when you have your staff and board members, because you're celebrating, you're bringing them together because you achieved something. You achieved a set out goal, and everyone had a role in it, right? So there's nothing better to help build that momentum and appreciation for being a part of the organization than to share success together and celebrate it. And yeah, we recommend facilitators that are outside because, again, strategic planning is not rocket science. There's a gazillion resources online about it. You can do it umpteen different ways. But if you have somebody who is at least knowledgeable in facilitating, but who is a little bit removed from your organization, you all then can do the business of discussing your organization and its best future, where you're not worrying about planning the next workshop or the next exercise, you know what I'm saying? So I think that's helpful too. So, any other questions or comments? We kind of went through this very quickly. You can drill down more, but the skeleton's there. And the simpler you can make that, the easier, again, for maybe smaller operations to just get from point A to point B. And then when you get to point B, it's probably time to start thinking about your next strategic plan, and you can get to point C. And it's very cool to look back and see where you've come. Yes?
Question about stakeholders.
Yes.
What are your recommendations on how to try to get an efficient group? If you have more than half a dozen different stakeholder groups, how do you get a small enough group that works well? And how far along that process do you try to include that big group, and when do you start to get down to a smaller, implementing group, I guess you call it?
Right. So again, many answers to that question, but what we would recommend is your most vested representatives who are your best thinkers, right? So sometimes you have to sort of hand pick from this group, this stakeholder group, who in this stakeholder group, a board, for example. It may or may not be your board chair. It may be somebody else, and depending on the politics of it all, sometimes you may have to invite your board chair and another board member, right? So some of that you have to be sensitive to the landscape, but you want a small enough working group. As far as identifying a group that's going to be your strategic planning staff, quote unquote, maybe 5 people even is a good number, depending on the size of your organization, to actually take the note. You want a note taker, right? You want somebody recording this and distilling it and coming up with the next step of the stage. There's different ways you can involve those stakeholders. They don't have to be part of the implementation team. Sometimes you can just use, maybe you do a handful of one-on-one interviews with key stakeholders, and that's the only engagement they have. But you're getting their voice through a one-on-one interview, and maybe you do a half a dozen of those. You might also do a broader survey, an email survey that goes to a broader group of people, and you just kind of get easier more calculating answers, that give you a bigger swath, but give you, more of a window on how a broader number of people feel about certain things. And then you have your boots on the ground people who are gonna be in those work sessions. You might bring that group together where you're doing the mission, vision, values, and SWOT analysis. But then maybe you get a smaller group who can go, okay, from this, here are the strategic goals, here are the objectives. Or depending on how involved your board members are, you can maybe stop by after you develop the strategic goals. And then staff maybe develops the objectives and the tactics and comes back to the board. So it can happen any number of ways, but you don't want it to be too unwieldy, right? So one-on-one interviews for a few key people, a group of surveys, and then a core working group might work well. Other thoughts?
We have a large number of employees at the park district, so we try to break it down into panels. So we do certain groups together, maybe 6, 7, 8 people at a time, and it really helps give, because if you get too many people, people get afraid to talk in front of other people. So we try to break it down into small groups so everyone would have a chance to say what they were thinking.
That's a good point. And if you have a lot of people you want to accommodate and don't know how, you might, after you get your strategic goals, you might take a group and go, here, you drill down on this strategic goal because of your role or whatever, you'd be great at working on this. And maybe you get another group working on a second strategic goal. So again, there's so much flexibility, but you're just trying to make it manageable and always keep it manageable. I hope that helped. And there was another question, yeah.
So what do you recommend as far as departments? So like we have a counseling department, an advocacy department, and an education department. How do you put all of those into a strategic plan? Should they be separate? Should they be all together? Are they just further down in the tasks?
Do you mean department representation or do you mean operational presence in the strategic plan?
I would say in the strategic plan.
So if it's something you do, you should probably be able to map it to something in your mission. If it's enough to have a department, it should somehow be reflected in your mission as what you do, is my thought. I'm kind of.
Exactly. In part, we had a program section or a goal section. We had an operation maintenance, financial, and staff, overall staff, and of course administration. So
Right.
yeah, we had 5 or 6 different areas that really focused on all the different areas that we focused on.
So they should have a presence in your strategic plan. If you are putting resources to having a department, you should map some kind of strategic goal for that function somewhere. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, and separate. So some would be agency-wide, but just to make sure to have all of those departments also have a separate goal?
Not necessarily a separate goal, but depending on your goal, if what they do through that activity helps you reach that goal. So I'm trying to think of an example. If you have a programmatic department and an advocacy department for organization X, they may both be trying to achieve some very similar things, right? So that's why it's hard to say kind of nebulously. But if you look at what your mission, if you've got your mission statement where you are happy with it, every department should see itself somewhere in that mission statement. And where they see themselves is probably going to guide you to where they need to be within, when you identify your focus areas of where you're going to develop each strategic goal, they should see themselves in at least one of them, if not more than one. And frankly, if you have somebody that doesn't know where they fit, usually it's the financial people, they're in your administration and resources section, right? So there is a home for everyone, or it would make me wonder, why is this in the organization? If it's not helping us achieve our mission, why is that even in existence? So I hope that helped. Other questions? Yeah.
So at what point in the process and with which stakeholders would you focus on along the way? Like, I could see it fitting in a lot of places. Is there, like,
The SWOT analysis,
Yeah, usually up front, I think it's one of the first things to do.
yeah.
Yeah, we did mission, vision, values, and work culture, and then we did the SWOT analysis right up front. It really helps you in the long run, set those goals and where your weaknesses are, where your threats are, and all the things we talked about.
Because remember, it's assessing the current landscape, because you're developing a 3-year plan from present. So what's the current conditions and what's it look like down the road that may impact your organization from doing what it wants to do? You need to kind of have that happen first, because your strategic goals are going to also help suggest themselves from that, the results of that SWOT analysis as well. Okay.
Just a really quick one, sorry.
Yeah.
How do you, I think one of the things that I'm getting hung up on is just the communication piece of this to, not necessarily some of the stakeholders, but folks who care about our ability to deliver on this. And we're in a bit of a unique situation where 3 years for us is getting us to where we probably should be versus where we want to go aspirationally.
Mhm.
And so, for instance, you know, I've been working on a strategic plan. I sent a draft of it to one of our critical alums, and the point was like, well, why aren't you focusing on this as one of your strategic goals? And the point is actually that's its audience. It's one of our strengths. So we don't necessarily need to include it as a goal, because the entire plan is maximizing that strength.
Sounds like you answered your
I guess-
critic.
Thank you.
Right? But right?
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of a strategic plan, because when you get asked questions like that and you're going, you pull that strategic plan out, and it's the methodology of it is a thing of beauty, right? And it gives you backup, and it gives you rationale. This is why we are doing this. Yes, we have this strength. The strategic plan is helping us leverage that strength, right? So we don't have to make it a goal. We're gonna leverage that. So that's the nice part about it, right? And that's why a strategic plan should be a very visible thing. And to your external constituencies, you are sharing the movement, the progress. Everybody loves a winner. And if you are achieving things, if you are making progress, people are gonna go, they have their act together. They know how to run their organization. I wanna be a part of that, or I wanna support that. It just filters down to everything else. And that's also why I'm saying the marketing plan should come after the strategic plan. Because your marketing plan should be reflecting and leveraging the good things happening because of the strategic plan. Okay? Yay, I can't wait to see all these strategic plans.